generic, simple, easily understandable, universal statement of the theory. So I'll give you the statement of my theory that applies to almost all of my work, but specifically on astronomy for both Ramayana and Mahabharata. My theory says all the astronomy observations of Mahabharata and Ramayana are actual, factual, visual observations of the sky of those times. Do you think it's a clear statement, something you can understand? Whatever is described was seen by the folks of Ramayana and Mahabharata times in the sky at that time. Okay, that's it. It has to be universal. Then you have this central triangle, and then there is at the bottom Agama. Now when you hear this, if I ask you the question, where did science originate? Any answers? Quickly, like to the audience. Where did science originate? This methodology. I'm sure you have heard somewhere. Definitely you heard where the science started in some country and then it went all over. No? How many of you have heard Greece? Science started in Greece. Okay, raise your hand. Thank you. Okay. All right. Greece, Roman, somewhere there. Okay, those of you who did not raise the hand, I think you were taking a trip when that subject was being discussed. But usually you hear Greece or something like this. I want to tell you, irrespective of where it occurred, this is very much Indian method. You talk at the top the theory, but if you go to Patanjal Yoga Sutra, Sage Patanjal, his Yoga Sutra, Samadhipad, the very first chapter, you just go 1, 2, 3, 4 page and go to verse number 7. It says Pratyaksha Anumana Agama Pramana. Here. Pratyaksha Anumana Agama Pramana. What is that? Explanation, prediction, testing in the context of background knowledge, which is Agama. Okay? And the next verse that follows is beautiful. It says Viparyo Mithya Jnanam Atatrupa Pratishta. Anything contrary to this, the first line, anything contrary is false, is a false method. Now, this is what said by Patanjali, but Sage Gautam says the same thing in his Nyaya Darshan. Pratyaksha, Anumana, Upamana, Shabda, Pramana. Suddenly we go to Sanskrit and we think, that must be backward. Okay? Now these are the sages from India. But you know what? India is not the only country that has sages. Sages are all over. Okay? So if you, therefore I call this sage Karl Popper. How many of you have heard the name Karl Popper? No? Okay, alright. A great philosopher of science. And do you know what he says? Now see if you can make a connection. He says the method of science is explanation, prediction, testing in the context of a theory and a background knowledge. Do you see all the 5 words? Pratyaksha, Anumana, Agama, Pramana. Or another name, I'm sure you know this name, Richard Feynman. All physics students must know this, and others too. Wonderful person. Again, I call it sage for a reason. He says, you propose a theory to solve a problem. Then you compute the consequences. Which is what? Creating predictions. And then you compare those predictions with the actual evidence and you decide. Again, everyone is saying the same thing. They're simply using the different language. Okay? Now we get into the astronomy. Astronomy evidence from the epics. How much evidence is out there? For example, in Bhagavad Gita itself, there is sufficient evidence. I'm telling you, Bhagavad Gita itself, there is a sufficient evidence that will allow you to decide the approximate timing of Mahabharata. Just Bhagavad Gita itself. I'm not going to go through it today. So what I did, and I'm going to go quickly through this, Mahabharata itself has more than 200 specific astronomy observations. So I used this logic of scientific method. I took those 200 observations, one at a time. I found a way to objectively test it, that is the other corner, and therefore arrived at 5561 BCE as the year of Mahabharata. Okay, that took me 15 years, so I'm not going to cover that everything in 40 minutes. Same thing I did for Ramayana, which is more than 500 specific astronomy observations. again I found a way to objectively test them, each one of them, sometime in group if required, okay, to arrive at 12,209 BCE as the year of Ram Ravan. 12,200, that's 14,000 years ago. Okay? If you are scared, don't fall off your chairs, okay? Just hang on tight. 14,000 years ago. These are the two books, and one to introduce me mention it. The first one, When Did the Mahabharata War Happen? I published in 2011. The second book, The Historic Ram, I published in 2014. And I'll tell you the next book I'm ready to publish. So, what is astronomy poison pill? Astronomy poison pill is a fact, something that is objectively testable. All engineering students, of course, we do a lot of empirical design too, but objectively testable. That creates a crisp, plain, rational, and scientific shield of extreme mathematical certainty. Of extreme mathematical certainty. Against what? Extreme mathematical certainty against the dogmatic, skeptical, and superficial claims that are made for our ancient Indian history events. Okay. Just quick examples. These are not from astronomy, but just to give you an idea what I mean by astronomy poison pill. Why it is mathematical certainty. Why it is crisp. Okay. Let's take the first example of Tilak, Savarkar and Gandhi. Most of you know these three individuals. And then vernier caliper. How many of you know vernier caliper? See, I chose the right example. So the first, these are three great individuals there. Lokmanya Tilak, Swatantraveer Savarkar, Mahatma Gandhi. I am going to quiz you now. You have those surprise quizzes? Yeah, okay. True or false? Lokmanya Tilak, Swatantraveer Savarkar and Mahatma Gandhi met at Pune in 1923 to discuss the state of British rule in India. So, how many of you think this is true? Raise your hand. One. Okay. Okay, that's right. How many of you think this is false? Raise your hand. Okay. Alright, what about others? There is no third option, guys. Okay. So those who said true, and ma'am, thank you for being very courageous. Okay, we'll get the right answer anyways. Okay, those of you who said it's false, okay, ma'am, sir, if I can ask you, why do you think it's false?
Because Savarkar and the Gandhi are two opposite kinds of personalities.
I love it, okay? That is not the correct answer, but you know, that's the correct answer, but that's not astronomy poison pill. I will repeat what he said. He said because Savarkar and Gandhi, they had a very different political views, and maybe that's why it may not be possible. Anyone else with a different answer? Yes.
I think Savarkar was recently out of jail and he was continuously watched by police and he was in Maharashtra at that time.
Okay, so they were not in, well, Pune is in Maharashtra, but you know what he's saying is they were not maybe in the same place, just out of jail. Anyone else? Yes. Okay, very good. Thank you very much. That's the correct answer. Please stand up there. Can everyone give a big round of applause? Thank you. So, now all of these could be possibly correct answers, right? Nothing wrong with it. But he said, Lokmanya Tilak passed away in 1920. It's a verifiable evidence. And just based on that, you know, we don't need to need to know their political philosophies, if they were going to get along fine with each other, where he was. No. So that all is relevant. I'm not saying that. But the fact he passed away, Lokmanya Tilak passed away in 1920, acts like a poison pill. Are you with me? Poison pill against this claim. Everyone follows what I'm saying? The fact he was gone in 1920, you can argue forever about their political philosophies. But you know what? Unless you have some different theories, and you know what theories I'm talking, the planchet and whatever you want to go at, this statement is false because 1920 provides us a poison pill. It's a clear, crisp evidence. Everyone follows? We are going to use that in Mahabharata and Ramayana. The second example, 1920. Okay? Ma'am, you are with us on the same page now? Very good. Okay. So each of these evidence, okay, lifespan of each person allows us to put a constraint. Something could not have happened before this time, something could not have happened after this time. Do you follow? I mean, when they were born and when they were gone. It has to be in between. That makes sense. Let us look at this. Everyone likes cricket, I know. I stopped following cricket for many years now, for 25 years or so. So look at this cricket ball, and I'm sure the cricket fans know the restrictions, the dimensions. This is a daytime cricket, by the way. Okay, there are different dimensions, by the way. If we want to take this ball and convince us that it follows the Indian cricket board standards, you might take a vernier caliper. There are many ways to do this. And what do? You place the ball into those two prongs, right? And you have main scale here to give you approximate reading, fit it properly. And then you have the finer or the vernier scale that gives you that second final reading. The point I want to make is this. If you do not place this ball properly between the two prongs, it does not matter how accurate you take the reading on the vernier scale. Everyone follows what I'm saying? Still your answer will be very precise. Like say 71 point whatever it is, 4-digit decimal places, but it could be precise and wrong because you did not place the ball properly between the prongs. What it means is you need to get the things approximately right first before you go for precisely accurate. Alright, so what does this all have to do with Ramayana and Mahabharata? Let's quickly go through an astronomy phenomenon and then we'll get into the evidence. How many of you have heard the phenomenon called precession of equinoxes? Or another name is precession, which is a movement of the Earth's axis. Anyone? Okay, two, very good. So, you keep me honest. I'm going to give you the definition, you tell me if I'm right. Okay? Alright. If you have a long exposure camera, you go outside Surat city where it's completely dark, and at night you look in the north direction and you expose that long exposure camera for a long time, looking in the north direction, you'll get a picture like this. What are you seeing? At the top here, that circle, where the circle stops, what you're seeing there is our current North Pole star. Its name is Polaris. And all the stars in the northern sky, you will see them coming up in the northeast and going in an anti-clockwise direction around that North Pole and then go down the horizon. Everything will not go down the horizon, some will just continue to circle until the sunrise, okay? And then the next day. And based on their tracks, you may be able to actually say, for example, that this star, it's creating a track, is walking ahead of this star. Do you follow what I'm saying? Because they're going in anti-clockwise direction and they're creating their tracks. Keep this in mind. That's our pole star in our times, and these are the stars creating the patterns. Now, what is the precession of equinoxes or precession of the rotational axis of the Earth? This is our Earth here, inclined at an angle with respect to the Sun. And wherever it points in the sky, we call it NCP in the northern hemisphere, North Celestial Pole, or Uttar Dhruva Bindu. And if there happens to be a bright star next to it, we call it a Dhruva Tara or a pole star. In our times, it's Polaris. But as I said, this particular Earth's axis has its own motion. And it goes like this and completes one circle. Anyone knows how long does it take? Those folks who raise their hand?
14 degrees.
What is it?
14 degrees.
So that's 23 degree approximately. But to complete one cycle, how long does it take?
3,000 years. 8,000 years.
No, not 10,000 years, 26,000 years. It takes 26,000 years to complete this whole circle. So what happens is this. As this Earth's axis rotates and it points towards somewhere else, so for example, if you go back by 13,000 years, half of 26,000, what will happen is this. The Earth's axis will now point like this, and instead of pointing at Polaris, it will be pointing at another part of the sky, and there happens to be a very bright star. It goes by the name Brahmarashi or Abhijit in the Indian astronomy. Anyone knows its other name in the Western astronomy? Vega. Okay, Abhijit astronomy. So if we all would have lived 11,000 BC or before, around that time, instead of Polaris, we would have said our pole star is Abhijit or Brahmarashi. Just keep that in mind. Okay. So with time, the pole star changes. And when that happens, there are many other things that also happen. I'm not going to go explain those, but actually I'll show you what happens. So let's look at the astronomy poison pills from Mahabharata. As I said, there are many, but I'm going to share a couple with you. More than 200 astronomy observations. Now we need to split them. Actually, I split them into two categories like this. The first one, the blue one, I call it effects due to the precision of equinoxes. Think of the vernier caliper again. Think of this evidence in the blue as similar to placing that cricket ball appropriately, properly between the two prongs of vernier caliper, getting it approximately right. The other type of evidence is a near-earth phenomenon, and I call it that is used to do the precisely accurate, deciding the exact year of the Mahabharata. Okay? So if you don't address this, you are going to get it wrong. What is that near-earth phenomenon? Sun comes to the same position in the same point every year. Moon can come to the same nakshatra every 27, 29 days. Moon can come to the same phase every 30 days. So that's a near-earth phenomenon. It happens repeatedly, fast. But that's not the case when we look at these blue observations. So I'm going to show you something from the blue because they act like astronomy poison pills. Okay, so first one is called Arundhati Vasishta observation. This appears in the Bhishma Parva. Now Mahabharata has 18 Parva. Okay, so Bhishma Parva is where the war begins.